He's agreed to not only answer some online questions, which may be relevant to what you're asking, but in addition, he's agreed to answer your questions directly. If you have a question for him, all you need to do is post this down in the comments section below, and he will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours with his response. Obviously, if you have more pressing of an issue, feel free to reach out to John directly. His contact information is in the content section below. With that said, John, let's go ahead and go into our first question. First question was, if I get into an accident, who pays for my medical expenses?
Okay, thanks, Ryan. The first question about medical expenses is actually a very common one. Most people who are involved in a serious accident, whether it be a vehicular accident, truck accident, or something at work, who will have to deal with medical expenses, and those can really start adding up quickly. Typically, what ultimately will happen is that the adverse party, the party who injured you, so if it's a vehicle accident, the adverse driver's insurance carrier will be the person that will be responsible for your medical expenses, and that's what kind of a personal injury attorney's job is to do, is to work with that adverse insurance carrier and make the demands on them based on your medical expenses. Now, if the accident was your own fault and you were the cause of your own injuries, then you kind of have to rely on your own health insurance, or there is also med pay or medical payments that can provide for you, and that's something that you should have in your insurance policy, in your auto insurance policy at least, is medical payments that can kind of help provide for your medical expenses if the accident ends up being your own fault. But if it's the adverse party's fault, then we go after the adverse insurance carrier for those medical expenses.
Okay. Next question we had is, if I'm in a car accident and my vehicle's has been damaged, am I entitled to a rental car?
Okay, so if your vehicle is damaged after a car accident, a lot of people end up without a mode of transportation to get around, and that's a problem because they have a lot of hospital visits, sometimes other medical providers that they have to get to, sometimes even work. So one thing that's smart to do is to have rental insurance in your own auto insurance policy. So that's something that you can talk to your insurance provider and make sure you get that in there. If you don't, most adverse insurance companies, the party that it's at fault, their insurance carrier will also usually kick in and provide a reasonable amount of time in a rental vehicle. They'll pay for a reasonable amount of time. That can be a very short period of time, though, so you want to make sure that you're contacting an attorney to see what your options are in that circumstance.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. The next question we had was, if I'm in a car accident with another party and that party leaves the scene of the accident before the police arrive, or before I can obtain their information, what should I do?
This actually happens quite often, people that are leaving the scene of an accident after they cause it because they're afraid of the consequences that they may have. Another reason that it's vitally important to look at your insurance policy closely is that if you do not have uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, specifically in this instance uninsured, you may be out of luck in this circumstance. But if you did get that uninsured motorist coverage, which is an option you can have in your insurance policy, and most people do have that, then you can, well, the first thing to do in an accident is to call the police and make sure that they take a report. Try to gather as much evidence as you can, see if there's other witnesses that we can track down this person. Call an attorney who may be able to have some resources of looking up where this person was, if there was any witness statements. But you always have your own insurance policy to fall back on, which is your uninsured motorist policy, which would compensate you in what we call the phantom vehicle type of situation.
Gotcha. Okay. Next question we have is, if I'm involved in an accident with a person that lives in another state, what should I do?
Again, you want to first make sure that you have the police come out to the scene of the accident, because in this kind of circumstance, we have an individual who lives in another state. We want to make sure we have the correct information from them. So we need to get their name, their date of birth, their policy that they have, where they live, address. Those kind of things are important, and the police will take that. And actually, most of the time when there's an auto accident and the police come to the scene, they have an information sheet that they exchange with the parties who have been involved that will list on there the name, address, all the identifying information that you will need. You can then take that sheet and bring it directly to an attorney who will be able to track down that person's insurance coverage, send them a notice, open up a claim for you, and even if it's out of state, get that taken care of. Just of a note, typically you need an attorney that practices in the state where the accident occurred. So if you're in another state, say you're in California and get in an accident, you're going to typically need a California attorney. If you're in Arizona, you need an Arizona attorney. Another attorney in another state can actually handle a claim, but not to the point of actually filing a lawsuit, which
Gotcha.
So that's how that works.
Okay. All right. And the final question we have is, if I loan my car to a friend and they're in a serious accident, what happens in that scenario?
That's actually something that occurs also from time to time. It's a serious situation where someone has loaned their vehicle out to another party, and that party has gotten into an accident causing that accident. What you need to be aware of is that your insurance follows the vehicle. So even though you were not driving your vehicle, your insurance policy is going to be up for examination and grabs by the person who was injured by that.
Okay.
So that's the first method, and then the second method can always go after the policy of the person who was actually driving. So that would be the secondary policy.
Okay. Well, that was the last of the questions. If you've been watching the video, first want to thank you for your time, and obviously if you have any questions directly, all you have to do is post them to the comments below. John will get back to you as soon as possible. Clearly, if you have an immediate need, just reach out to him directly. John, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Today we're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney located in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some questions online that were posted. If you've actually been injured in the Phoenix area or anywhere in Arizona for that matter, feel free to give him a call. He's open to answering any questions you have. And on top of that, he's actually agreed to answer questions below the video. So if you have a question just from watching this video, or if you have been injured, all you need to do is simply post your questions at the bottom of the YouTube video, and John will actually come back and answer those questions directly. So with that said, John, started, go ahead and ask you a few questions that were posted online. The first one we had was, do cases typically settle, or do they go to trial?
Okay, Ryan, thanks for the introduction. Regarding the question of whether cases typically settle or they go to trial, a very common question that I get in my practice, and the answer may surprise people, that actually I've heard numbers of up to 95 and even higher % of cases actually do settle before they go to trial. There's actually a lot of work that goes into the settlement process, and there's different times during the process where the case may settle. So it may settle right off the bat before a complaint is ever filed. It may settle after a complaint is filed, but before a trial commences. It may settle during arbitration. It may settle, you know, any time in between in the process. There's a discovery process, so there's a lot of time that typically will pass before you get to an actual trial. So I guess the numbers are a very high percentage of those cases do settle. And usually that's a good thing for the clients. Sometimes, though, if the insurance company is not being fair, it's better to go to trial and hold them to their task, you know?
Understand. Okay. Next question we had was this is kind of a general question, but there wasn't a lot of details, so you might have some points on this one. But how do I know who's liable for my?
Okay, so knowing who is liable for the injury can be interpreted. This question kind of is pretty broad, but I'll attempt to answer it as best as I can. First, we have to make a determination of who is at fault for the accident or the injury. So sometimes we don't know exactly who's at fault, so there has to be an investigation done to determine who's at fault. What parties are involved? What actions did they have? Or what part they in the scenario? And there's a determination of who's at fault. But then the other question to ask with this question is who is liable for the injury is what insurance is involved with the parties that are at fault. So sometimes we know who's at fault, but there's multiple insurance companies that are involved with that at-fault party. So we have to do an investigation to see what policies are potentially out there for compensation. And sometimes there's multiple policies that we could go after. So there's a whole gamut of situations that we need to look at in each case. And any good attorney is going to sit down with their client, go over the facts of the case in detail, and interpret those facts, apply it to the law, and then find out what our best method is moving forward.
Okay, all right, makes sense. This question is much more specific. It's a little longer, so bear with me. I fell when walking into a major department store. I own a small company, and they are not going to compensate me for the insurance company is not going to compensate me for missed sales on my days off. Is this fair?
There is ways of getting compensation for missed work or missed sales, but the important thing to do in this scenario is to keep good records of your missed work because of the injury. So what I always tell clients to do is to keep a journal of how long they're out of work and what times they're out of work and how that's affected them. The other thing that we need to look at is what kind of compensation they would typically get if they were able to work on a regular basis, and compare it to how they are now, how much income they're able to make now. It's easier if they're an employee that makes an hourly wage and their employer can write a note that said that they missed this amount of work, this many hours, and we can do the math that way. Someone who's self-employed, it becomes a little more complicated, and that's why more detailed information needs to be taken down. And so it's a good idea to really make very clear and accurate notes about how much time you're missing, what missed opportunities you've had, and sit down with your attorney and come up with a plan to present that to an insurance company in a way that they will understand and be able to compensate you for it.
Understood. Okay. And last question we had was, I was injured at work and I'm currently receiving workman's compensation. Can I get more than just my workers' compensation?
Yeah. It's actually a good question. When you accept workers' compensation, there are times where that's your only avenue of recovery. So if you're getting the workers' compensation, you won't have other opportunities to get anything else. There are a number of situations, and I don't want to go into specifics because each case is very different, but there are a number of situations where you actually can bring a personal injury claim aside from your workers' compensation claim. And so you really need to sit down with an attorney and go over the specific facts of the case so that they can evaluate, apply the law, and determine if you have other avenues that you can get compensated. Just another side note there is that there are certain statute of limitations issues that prevent you to bring certain claims beyond a certain amount of time. So if you've been getting workers' compensation for a certain amount of time and want to then bring a personal injury claim, you'll want to act fast because your time may be tolling on that issue.
Okay, all right, well, that's probably some good advice there. With that said, if anyone that's watching this has any additional questions, like I said, you can post them below to the YouTube questions. John will get back to you. If you have an immediate question, you can always just call their office or visit their website. We've provided the link below to his website. And with that said, John, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, Ryan.
We're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some online questions that some people posted. In addition, these are specifically related to assault. And if you've been assaulted, it's like the people we're about to list, if you have any questions related to it, you can post this in the comments section below. John's agreed to get back to you with answers. Also, if you have a more pressing situation or concerned or curious about the compensation levels you potentially could receive, you can reach out to John directly, and his contact information is there. With that said, John, let's go to our first question that was posted. The first question was from Daryl. Daryl says, I was in a fight which I did not start. There were no charges filed, but I did get stitches. I was not the aggressor in the fight. Is it possible for me to file a claim against my assailant?
Okay, Daryl does have the possibility of filing a claim against the person who injured him. You can always file a claim against another individual. However, you will have the burden to prove your claim. So we have to kind of look at what it takes to prove an assault charge in Arizona, or an assault claim. So the Arizona statute requires that the person intended to harm you, or at least cause you apprehension of that harm. And not only did they intend to harm you, but they did in fact harm you or cause you that apprehension, and that you suffered damages. So with a lot of lawsuits with assault cases, there are some things that we want to find out from our clients before we actually file a lawsuit. So before they do that, it's wise to contact a qualified attorney who can give you some advice regarding whether you can file that claim. Well, we know you can file it, but whether it's going to be a successful claim and whether there's the availability of compensation for you.
Okay, all right, excellent. Next question we have is from Alex. Alex says, I have been assaulted and received injuries from a third party. What steps do I need to be taken to ensure I have a case? And what if the assaulting party has limited funds?
Alex's question is actually a very good one. What are the steps that he needs to do to see if he can get compensation? He first needs to file a police report if he's been assaulted. And this kind of goes back to collecting evidence and making sure that we can document what exactly happened. An investigation needs to be done, and it is actually helpful if the police show up, and actually if they go and give a citation for an assault, a criminal assault, to the other party, it can be helpful to his civil case. He needs to take pictures of his injuries and provide witness information to his attorney. He will want to contact an attorney to see if it's worth pursuing after that. So he mentions that the party may have limited funds, and that is actually something that he should consider before filing a lawsuit. So oftentimes an attorney will be able to assess whether the party who assaulted him will have the funds to be able to compensate him for his injuries.
Okay, all right. The last question we had here is from Ben. Ben says, I am being sued civilly. I am being sued civilly for assault, but was not criminally charged. I see you work on a contingency basis, but how does that work in my situation?
Well, he's going to want to actually contact an insurance defense attorney regarding the lawsuit. That insurance defense attorney will probably have a different kind of fee agreement aside from a contingency fee agreement, and we'll be able to see if he has any defenses to the claim and can respond to the lawsuit. So that's something for an insurance defense attorney to look at closely. He can just sit down, do a free consultation with that attorney, and get the information he needs of how to proceed forward.
Excellent. Okay. Well, if anyone watching has any questions for John, you simply post them in the comments below. If you have, again, a personal situation, maybe you don't want to post it online, or you want to reach out to John directly, you feel free to do so. His number's on the video and the contact information. John, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
We're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some questions related to motorcycle accidents. For the people who posted your questions, we're going to get back to you right in this video. If you've been injured in a motorcycle accident, you can obviously reach out to John directly, but he's also is going to allow people to post their questions in the comment section below. All you have to do is post your comment or your question, and Dave or John will get back to you with his answers. With that said, John, let's go into our first questions. This one was from Steven. Steven says, do motorcycle cases provide any different compensation levels than car accident cases?
Well, that's a good question. In Arizona, the underlying laws for compensation are no different in a truck accident, a car accident, a motorcycle accident. They are all governed by the same laws. Motorcycles do present some different circumstances which actually change the compensation levels we typically see. Motorcycles are less stable, they're less visible, often they're high performance, and coupled with the driver being more exposed to the elements, they typically result in worse injuries. Because the injuries are worse, the amounts of compensation that we see in these cases are typically larger. But other than the amount of injuries, the actual laws that govern these injuries are all the same.
Okay, all right. The next question was from Randy. Randy says, I was hit by a truck while riding my motorcycle. I do have minor injuries, but it was completely his fault. What factors would be considering in determining my compensation?
Well, in any motorcycle accident, there's several factors that your attorney will want to sit down with you and determine before we can start talking about what compensation you would be able to get from it. The minor injuries, you know, is a question, is a subjective answer. So we need to know what he considers minor. You know, are we talking broken bones? Are we talking scraped skin? You know, there's a lot of different injuries that could happen that could be considered somewhat minor. Were the injuries all related to the accident is another question. Was there any pre-existing injuries that were there? Was there any property damage to the motorcycle? Was there any missed work? And then one of the most important question is does he have insurance? And did the person that caused the accident have insurance? So these are all questions that, and there's more, that need to be gone through in detail before we can start determining how we can get to compensation and how much it would be.
Okay, all right. And the final question we have was from Alex. Alex says, I was hit by a truck while riding my motorcycle. Oh, excuse me, that was the wrong one. Alex, I was on I-10 west of town and ended up laying down my bike to avoid hitting a couch on the road. I did spend some time in the hospital. Can I go after anyone for leaving this on the road? Do I have any recourse?
Believe it or not, he likely does have some recourse. First, he needs to make sure that he calls the police and makes a report of the accident. That's one of the most important things that he can do. Because we don't know who left the couch on the road, we would need to look at Alex's own insurance to see if he has uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage. So that uninsured motorist coverage comes into play when we have a phantom object or a phantom vehicle that causes the injury. Hopefully he will have that motorist coverage in his own insurance policy. Then he'll need to make a claim with his own insurance company to get him that compensation for his injuries. However, he should still talk to an attorney because he wants to make sure he's making all the necessary claims to his own insurance company and he's telling him the right information so that he can maximize his compensation.
All right. Well, that was the last question. Again, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, post them in the comments section below, or you can reach out to John directly. John, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
Today we're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some of the questions that were posted online. And for those of you who have posted those questions, you're going to get your answers right now. If alternatively, if you have, or if you're looking for a personal injury attorney, you can feel free to give him a call. Also, John has agreed to answer any of the questions you have directly by just simply posting them on the bottom of this YouTube video. So with that said, John, let me go ahead and start off with some of the questions here. The first question we had. The person asks, I have a work-related lawsuit, and I believe it's a fairly strong case. I would not like my employer to know what I'm considering while pursuing the case. If the case doesn't work out, just in case the case doesn't work out, is this something possible, basically to hide it from your employer?
Okay, there is a certain amount of the case that you could hide. The initial stages of investigation is something that you can consult with an attorney. That attorney can talk to you about what the likelihood of your case being successful is, whether there's some things that the attorney can do to get an investigator working on it, or experts evaluating you for your injury to determine if that's a pursuable case. At some point, it's not going to be a secret, and you can't keep that secret when you want to actually pursue the case in the legal system in that sense. So if you want to actually get a settlement out of the case, or win with a lawsuit further down, that's going to be something that's going to take notification to your employer. Another issue with this is sometimes there's general rules with how soon a person has to notify their employer of an injury that had happened at work. So if we're talking about an injury at work, it's a good idea to notify your employer at least that you had that injury and that you're getting treatment for that. And then I would recommend talking to an attorney right away about at least exploring your possibilities of what kind of case you might have, not necessarily needing to inform your employer right away that you're pursuing a lawsuit.
Okay, all right. Well, no, that makes total sense. Next question we have is, and I'm sure you get this one all the time, if I win my case, how long will it take to collect my money?
Okay, so there's two ways to win your case in a personal injury case, and I'm assuming one of those ways that people feel like they've won is if they settle out of court. The other way is to actually go to trial and have a jury verdict and have a verdict from the jury, and so those can kind of make the answer to it a little bit different, but generally it should happen within 30 days that you could get your money, and that's there's a lot of other factors. There's attorneys involved on the other side that may need to get you some documentation, a release form. Insurance companies, when we settle, they often have to write a check, and some of these insurance companies are very big, so they have a lot of files that they're dealing with and a lot of checks that they're writing. The other issue is that your attorney will need to put the funds, once they receive those, into a client trust account, and in Arizona the requirement is that they put that check in an IOLTA account for 10 days at least to make sure that the check clears. So there are some things that prevent you from getting the money immediately, but it generally is around 30 days. It can be longer though.
Okay, all right, and another question. This is probably an extension of that. Well, here's the other one. Will I be able to testify in court? Will I be required to testify in court like in a criminal case, in a personal injury type of case?
Not always, and most of the time you would not need to testify in court. I had talked about earlier about cases settling outside of trial, and there's a good majority of the cases that actually do settle without ever going before a judge. And in this instance, it's likely that you would not have to provide any testimony. Now, that is a separate issue from whether you provide statements to the adverse insurance company or your own insurance company, and those aren't usually settings where you would have to be in front of a judge testifying like people think about as a court setting. But you may have to provide statements. Now, if you go to trial, then you would need to provide your own testimony in most cases, and you would be in front of a judge and a jury, and you would provide your testimony like you see on TV with criminal cases. So it's very unlikely in the typical case. I wouldn't say it's very unlikely, but it's unlikely in the typical case, but it does happen.
Okay. Well, those were the questions that were posted online. We have some other questions that will be asked later on. If you're watching this, and like I said, if you have any questions for John, John's agreed to answer the questions online, so just post them to the comment section, or obviously you can just give John a call. So, John, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan.
We're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some questions related to slip and fall. If you've been in a situation where you have a case that you think may be important, these questions may help you. With that said, John, let's go into our first question here. How long does it typically take to get my case processed and paid to me?
Thanks, Ryan. Happy to answer that question. When someone is injured, it only seems fair that they be paid for their injury promptly by the insurance company, especially after the case is already settled. Insurance companies, though, they're notorious for taking their time to get out these monetary payments to the clients. And a lot of times what it actually takes is an aggressive attorney to hold their feet to the fire, so to speak. So, in my firm, I make sure I am in contact with the insurance companies, or calling them, bothering them, making sure that they are sending the settlements out in a reasonable time. Understand that if you're still treating for your injury, we're not going to want to try to settle the claim at times, because we want to know what the extent of the injuries are. So really, that's the initial driver of when the case settles. But once we know what the extent of the injuries are, we put together a demand to the insurance company, and it can get settled pretty quickly from there. So to answer the question, the process shouldn't take long, a couple of weeks after the actual settlement is obtained, before the check is in the client's pocket.
Okay, next question we had is, I fell in a parking lot at a major retailer and twisted my ankle. I went to the hospital and was released later that day. Is it possible I have a claim?
Okay, when you're at a business, any business in Arizona, you're considered an invitee to that business, and it's actually a legal term. So the owner of that business, therefore, has a duty to you, and that duty is to protect you from unreasonable, dangerous conditions that might exist on their property. So we can establish, just like we always do, a claim of liability based on negligence for the hazardous thing that existed at that business. So there are some questions that I would want to ask any person who has a claim like this, that they've twisted their ankle and went to the hospital. Was the business aware of the condition that caused that injury? And was it an unreasonable condition? Second, if not, should the business have known about the condition? Or was the business in a position to have known that that condition would arise? And so these are the kind of questions that we have to kind of look at to see how the business could be held responsible for that injury. If it's an open and obvious thing that caused the injury, sometimes people trip on something, or that was open and obvious, that they were aware was there, but yet through their own fault, you know, slipped and fell on it, that's not going to be a good claim. So the other question is, were there damages? And so this case has an ankle injury, and it sounds like they went to the hospital. So it sounds like damages were there. So if we can prove the initial stage of that, they would have a claim.
Okay. Next question is, this is the second time I've slipped and hurt myself due to a company's mistake. Can I still be compensated, or since I was before, will I not be able to win?
Just because you've had an injury in the past does not mean that you don't have a claim in the future for a second injury. Now, attorneys call this pre-existing injuries, and they can either be to the same place of your body or somewhere else. So if you had a back injury before and now you have a head injury, you obviously have a claim for the head injury, and you know, it's a negligence-based claim. Now, if you had a back injury before that you were treating for, and you know, fell and slipped and hurt yourself again on your back, then you have a pre-existing injury to your back. So the question is, was that injury aggravated by the new injury? And a good medical provider will be able to separate those things. And if the case is that, you will have a valid claim. Now, pre-existing injuries can diminish the value of your claim to an extent. So it's important to talk to a good attorney, call them up and tell them their situation, what your previous accident was, when it was, how your treatment status was at the time that you fell again, and get a good consultation to determine what your best method is moving forward.
All right, this next one's fairly specific. I was offered a settlement for a fall at a sporting goods store. They basically forced me to take an ambulance, but I wasn't hurt that bad. I could tell they were just covering themselves. Now they are offering me a few $1,000s to sign a document, but I'm thinking this might not be the right decision. What should I do?
Well, in this circumstance, if the insurance company is offering a few $1,000s for someone who was transferred just by ambulance but says they weren't injured, it's kind of conflicting things there. It sounds like there may be more to this story. So we're going to have to talk to this individual a little bit further to kind of parse out what's going on here. Anyone who has this kind of circumstance, if they have a check from an insurance company, it's always a good idea to at least call an attorney to get a free consultation. There may be some things that you're missing in your case. You may have outstanding money for pain and suffering, lost wages. There's other avenues of compensation that you may not be aware of that the insurance company may know about, but you may not necessarily understand. So it's always a good idea to just make a phone call. I'm always available for a free consultation. I take care of my clients to do that because I understand that every case is a little bit different, and we have to find out what unique circumstances make this one either a good case or one worth pursuing.
Okay, and the final question we have is, I'm currently bedridden due to an injury at a grocery store. I haven't fully recovered yet, but I'd like to know my options after I'm able to walk again. Do you do house calls?
I know that people who are injured in an accident, slip and fall, whatever kind of accident it is, are going through a lot of stress. They have injuries in the first place with pain. They have medical expenses. They may be missing work. They have insurance companies calling them. They're having to collect their documents. So there's a lot that goes into one of these cases, and it mounts up for these people, and it becomes very stressful. I'm always willing to make a house call and take the burden off the client, and that is what I do at the Kelly Law Team is take the burden of dealing with the insurance company, take the burden of working with the medical records, take the burden of communication and making a demand for the injuries. These are all things that if you have a good attorney who takes the time to evaluate your case and do a good job, it will make your life a lot less stressful and make the process easier for you.
Excellent. All right. Well, if you have any additional questions for John, all you have to do is post them in the comments section below. He's agreed to get back to you with answers. Thanks for your time, John.
Thank you, Ryan.
Car accidents. If you're one of the people who posted those questions, you'll have your answer right now. For those of you who are just viewing this video, if you have been in a car accident, there's a couple things you should do. Obviously, you can visit his site below the video link, or you can give him a call. In addition, at the end of the video, he's agreed to allow people to post questions related to car accidents, and he's going to get back to you directly online. So all you have to do is post your questions to the YouTube comment section, and he will get back with you with his answers. With that said, John, let's get started. I'll give you a couple of questions. We've got the first question here was how long do I have to file a claim on my insurance for a car accident?
Okay, so every state actually is going to have their own statute of limitations laws, and these are the laws that determine how long you actually have to bring an accident claim or an injury claim. What you want to do is talk to an attorney in your own state, so that attorney can kind of give you the information you need. And here in Arizona, to bring a auto accident claim, you have 2 years generally from the date of the accident. So you need to make sure that you contact an attorney. Now there are other times where that statute of limitations can be 1 year, and those are specific circumstances that you would have to know the fact scenario and apply the law. So it's a good idea to at least consult with an attorney before you let that time pass.
Okay, all right. Next question we had is, can I negotiate an accident settlement without hiring an attorney?
Yes, you absolutely can negotiate your settlement, and the reality is that the insurance companies try to settle a claim with people that are involved in an accident as quickly as possible and before they hire an attorney. Oftentimes my clients will come to me and their insurance company only a couple of days after the accident, or the opposing insurance or the adverse company has already sent them a check to settle their claim, even though they had injuries or are in my office telling me that they're still getting treatment. So the reality is that yes, you can settle your own claim. The question of whether it is a good idea, and you may want to at least consult with an attorney, just like I mentioned previously, so that the attorney can at least guide you to what avenues you should be looking at. Remember, all of these cases have different fact scenarios, and there's different laws that apply to different fact scenarios, and you may be missing out on a certain avenue of compensation that you're not aware of. So it's a good idea to at least have a consultation with an attorney. And the reality is a lot of people find that attorneys have the negotiation skills, the know-how to actually settle these claims for larger amounts than what they would be able to do by themselves.
I understand. Okay, that makes sense. Next question we had was, I caused a wreck and was injured. I've missed a lot of work. Is my insurance supposed to cover my time off work?
Okay, in this fact scenario, the person that is asking the question actually caused the accident. And generally, your own insurance policy is not going to cover your expenses if you are the one that was negligent and caused the accident. Usually in your policy, you will have your liability coverage, which actually covers other people's injuries that you caused. So if you injured another party, that covers them so that they don't come after you personally. And the other part of that is that it covers you if someone else injures you and they don't have enough insurance to cover your injuries. And that's uninsured, underinsured. Now there is something called MedPay that's no-fault insurance that people should look into getting in their policy, that if they do have injuries in an accident, even if it is their fault, they still have that money set aside for them that they can use for their medical expenses.
Okay, I've never actually heard of that. That's actually interesting. Okay, and we had another question here was my insurance company has offered me a settlement for a car accident. I'm happy with the amount they offered, but my friends tell me I need to hire an attorney. If I'm satisfied with my settlement, why should I hire an attorney if I'm going to have to pay out a contingency fee to that attorney?
That's a great question, and the reality is that you don't need to hire an attorney. You can settle your claim if you feel comfortable and confident that the insurance company is giving you a fair amount. What you have to ask yourself is, why not at least consult with an attorney? Because most personal injury attorneys will give you a free consultation. And if you let them know, where you're at, the status of your case, and what the insurance company is offering, they may be able to give you an idea of whether they feel like the insurance company is being fair. If they feel like they are not being fair, or that that there is other avenues that you haven't considered for compensation, it may be beneficial to you to at least pick up the phone. So I always encourage people not to be afraid of an attorney, and just at least call them up and see what their options are. Many times I'm able to let clients know that they have other avenues for compensation, help them look at their case a little bit differently, and they're greatly benefited by that.
So would part of that be able to, for example, and I don't know if you're allowed to do this, but can you tell people, okay, well, in similar cases to like this is kind of the typical settlement, that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Most attorneys are going to know regarding how much damages there were, how much injuries there were, what a typical case like that would settle for. Now, attorneys, though, are typically pretty careful about giving exact figures or even, tight ranges, because there's a certain amount of unpredictability there with the case. There's no magic book that says this injury and this insurance equals this settlement. But any experienced attorney is going to be able to tell them that, given what they've heard, this sounds like a decent offer, or this sounds like they may be lowballing you on this case, and we may want to look at these other avenues for compensation. There may be other insurance available out there. So there's just a number of issues, and like I said, it's a free consultation, so you have nothing to lose by picking up the phone.
Okay, makes sense. Well, for those of you who posted your questions, hopefully these did answer your questions fully. If you have more, just let us know. Again, for those people just watching the video, if you want to reach out to John, feel free. Also, you can just post your questions below to the YouTube video, and he will get back to you as he has time, but hopefully within 48 hours. So hopefully he'll be able to get back to you. With that said, John, I want to thank you for your time, and thanks again.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll be happy to answer any questions that are posted. Hello, this is John Kelly from the Kelly Law Team. I had a question regarding injuries in a motorcycle accident, and specifically, do I need an attorney if the injuries are minor when you're involved in a motorcycle accident? The answer is likely you want to at least consult with an attorney on these kind of cases. Oftentimes, if the injuries are minor, the property damage on your motorcycle can actually be pretty significant still. Low impact wrecks can cause a lot of damage, especially to some of these custom bikes where you put a lot of money into it, and the insurance companies don't always know how to evaluate those bikes, because they'll take a fair market value of your bike, but they don't take into consideration all the money that you put into it to put the custom wheels on it, or a new paint job, that kind of thing. So an attorney can really step in and help you present that information to the insurance company so that you get a fair valuation of your bike and are not left with, out of pocket a lot of money. The other issue is with soft tissue injuries. Insurance companies oftentimes will try to deny coverage if they don't believe that you had a legitimate injury where they can show on an x-ray that there was a broken bone, or that there was some severe injury there that is very objective. The problem that we see with these is these soft tissue injuries oftentimes will manifest themselves later and will cause a lot of problems for people, whether it be, you know, continuing back pain or sciatic nerve issues or severe headaches and that kind of thing. So you want to be just kind of careful with these cases, and the insurance companies will want to try to settle them fast. So it's a good idea to call for a consultation. I'd be happy to do that and just walk you through the process.
We're with John Kelly with the Kelly Law Team. He's a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona, and he's agreed to answer some online questions for us. Well, actually, a specific online question, and it was posted, how do I find the best personal injury lawyer?
Ryan, if you've been injured, there's a lot of things that injured people are going through, and it's a very stressful time. They have doctors they're dealing with, medical expenses, their own pain, you know, property damage can be in place or missing work. So it's a very trying time. And finding the right attorney is actually a difficult process and an important one. So I have some tips for people to decide on what attorney to use, and 3 tips that I think will help them through the process. The first is to look at the attorney's reviews online. There's a lot of great websites. Avvo is one of them, AVVO, Google reviews, Yelp reviews. These are all you know, online resources for people to check into attorney, what their reputation is, past clients, that kind of thing. The second thing is to look into their experience. What kind of background do they have? You know, I was a former prosecutor, so I have a lot of trial experience, and I think trial experience is actually something that's relatively rare in the field, and it's a good thing to have for a personal injury attorney, because that attorney can actually take the case to trial and deal with the jury and force the insurance companies to be fair. And the final thing is to just call the attorney and get to know them. Have a free consultation with them. Make sure you actually talk to the attorney that's going to be handling your case. I always set aside at least 30 minutes for a free consultation. Go over all the facts of the case with them. See if your personalities work out together, because there's a lot of attorneys out there, and you want to have a good working relationship with them. So I think those are 3 important things for people to look at, right?
All right, well, makes a lot of sense. Thank you for your time. And if, for the people watching, if you have any additional questions, all you need to do is post them in the comments section below, and John's agreed to answer those and get back to you. Thanks again, John.
Thanks, Ryan. Hello, this is John Kelly of the Kelly Law Team. I wanted to talk to you about how motorcycle accidents are different than typical auto accidents when they go to a jury trial. The biggest issue that we see is that oftentimes jurors have a bias and oftentimes do not understand the challenges that motorcycle riders face on the road. So what we do is we make sure in voir dire, which is the initial stage of picking the jurors, we ask the right questions. And questions that are as simple as, have you ever ridden a motorcycle? Does anyone you know ride a motorcycle? Do you understand the mechanics of a motorcycle on the road and what specific challenges they face? These things can give us insight onto whether a juror is going to be a good fit for our jury and whether they're going to understand the physical properties of a motorcycle and how it can affect an accident. Very important to make sure that you have jurors that are not going to go on there and say, I don't like motorcycle riders, they get in my way, they're, you know, I've had bad experiences with them. Those are bad jurors for this kind of case. And especially because motorcycle accidents, they often have very high damages. The injuries are very severe. So that initial stage of picking the juror for the jury is very important.
We're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some questions related to car accidents. Also, if you have a question, you can just post it in the comment section below and he'll get back to you. With that said, let's go into our first question. The first question that was posted is, how long does it take to get paid?
Okay, a very common question, and you know, when you're injured by another party, it only seems fair that you would get compensated promptly. Unfortunately, there's some things that kind of prevent that from happening. Namely, the insurance companies are notorious for trying to withhold their money to pay out. So what you really need is an aggressive attorney, someone who's going to actually call these insurance companies, hold them to their standards, make them evaluate your case, review the records, and make a reasonable offer and settlement within a reasonable time. And at my firm, I do that. I'm very aggressive with my cases. I call the insurance companies, make sure they're doing those things. And typically, after I make a demand, we get the settlement pretty quickly. It's usually within 30 days of making the demand. So that's kind of a typical time.
Okay. Next question was, if I work with your firm, will I work with you or with another attorney?
Yes, I actually handle every case that I take personally. So I don't hand off the case to an inexperienced attorney or paralegal like a lot of firms do. There's a lot of law firms out there, unfortunately, that have kind of a turn and burn mentality where they take on as many cases as they can. They hire inexperienced staff, and they don't get the personal attention that they do at my law firm. When you call my office, you're going to get me, or you'll get my paralegal, Gary, who has 20 years experience doing personal injury work. And I evaluate the case on a case-by-case basis. I talk to my clients. I keep them updated. I staff the case with my paralegal, and I'm available by phone to my clients, which is a huge benefit to them because they don't feel like they're left out of the process, like they can't understand what's going on in their case. And I get a lot of clients that call me and they're frustrated that their attorney hasn't told them what they're doing on the case, and I just don't get that on my cases.
Okay. All right. The next question we have is, what will you do to ensure that I get compensated as much as possible for my car accident?
Well, that's a very good question. You need to have an attorney that's going to help you build your case. So that means collecting the evidence with you. So, you know, sending in the photographs to the insurance company, getting the right police reports, requesting all the medical records, ensuring that you're getting the treatment that you need to get better, and aggressively pursuing the insurance companies to make sure that they're playing fair. We have a wealth of experience in my firm in doing this, dealing with the different insurance companies, making sure that we're sending the right letters, the right demands, making the right phone calls, and doing these all at the right time to ensure that our clients are getting every dollar that we can for the claim.
All right. Next question we have is, do you ever take car accident cases to trial, or are they all settled?
They're not all settled, but most of them do settle. The reality is that trial is time-consuming, it's costly, it's risky, and most clients don't want to go through that process because it takes a long time to get to trial. It costs more money. It's stressful in a time that they're already stressed. So if we can make the insurance companies play fair and make a good offer for settlement, we want to go ahead and take that settlement because we're saving our clients a lot of headaches. And so the number is over 95% of our cases actually do not go to trial. It's a bit benefit to the client. Now, if we do go up against an insurance company that's playing unfair, we do take those cases to trial, and we have you have an attorney that has the trial experience to take those cases to trial. You know, I've done over 20 jury trials, and I've taken these cases to trial, and we can ensure that if that's the case, we'll do that.
Okay. And the final question we had is, will I be charged for someone to review my case?
Well, people are typically pretty nervous about this when they call in. They don't know how attorneys get paid. They worry that just by calling they may be charged something. The reality is that at my law firm, I'm always going to take the time to evaluate a case. I'm going to sit down with my client. If they want to do it over the phone, they can. They can come into my office for a free consultation. They can bring some documents with them, and I'll take a look at them and determine for them what their best method is moving forward. If it's found out that, it's a good idea to retain counsel, I'll let them know that, I'd be willing to take their case. At that point, we can, put the agreement down in writing. The good news is that I typically do a contingency fee, so the clients still don't pay anything until the actual settlement or award is made. So they don't owe their attorney anything until they actually get the money that compensates them.
Okay, excellent. Well, if you have any additional questions for John, all you need to do is post them in the comments section below. He's agreed to get back to you with answers to those comments. Also, obviously, you can reach out to his office. John, what's the phone number over there?
602-283-4122.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, John.
Thank you, Ryan.
So today we're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney. He's located in Phoenix, Arizona. And today he's helping us out by answering some questions that were posted online, specifically related to car accidents. If you were in a car accident, some of these questions are pretty broad in scope, so these may be applicable to you. And if you're one of the people that asked questions, obviously you're getting your answer right now. In addition, John has volunteered that at the end of the video, after you watch it, if you have additional questions, you can post them in the comments of YouTube. He's actually going to come back and answer those. So with that said, I'm going to ask some questions directly from the web to John. So John, the first question was from Daryl. He says he was in a wreck 2 months ago with minor injuries. The insurance company is offering to pay him a supplement which is covering more than his actual expenses. Does he still need an attorney?
Thank you, Ryan, for having me have these questions. As far as Daryl's concerned, I get this question quite often. Someone has been negotiating with the insurance company for any particular amount of time. They may have a settlement offer made, and it may cover all their expenses. So they're wondering, do I need to hire an attorney? One of the considerations they need to have is that insurance companies want to minimize the amount of money that they're paying out. So they're not necessarily going to inform Daryl if there's any other areas of compensation that would be available to him. What isn't mentioned in his question is whether the insurance company had provided any monetary value for his pain and suffering. They haven't taken into consideration whether he missed work from the accident, or what other avenues in his policy he may have, such as medical payments, what we call med pay, or other avenues that may be available to him that the insurance company is, either not necessarily letting him know or informing him of. So one of the things he can do is at least have a consultation. And at the Kelly Law Team, I always sit down with clients, I look at their policy, it's a free consultation, and I give them advice about whether or not they could possibly do better. A lot of times they can, but sometimes I say, look, you got a good settlement here. So, it never is a bad thing to at least talk to an attorney to determine if there's more money out there available.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense actually. Okay, next question was from Janet. She said her car had a blowout and ended up running into a light pole. She said no one was hurt, but she's asking if she can sue the tire manufacturer.
Yeah, so a lawsuit against a tire manufacturer and actually the person that sold the tire to them also could be in play in this. And that's going to be a product's liability case, and there would have to be negligence on the part of either the tire manufacturer or the realtor. But the interesting thing is that there wasn't any injuries, so we're talking about property damage only. So, there's also the consideration if there was damage to the vehicle, if it wasn't significant damage, it may be a lot of effort to go after a tire manufacturer to get them to pay for, say it was $1,000 in damage. You may have a hard time pursuing that claim and having the value there. But with any products liability cases, I get these a lot where there are tire defects. And in those cases, a lot of times in truck accidents, we're looking at the manufacturer of the tire. The insurance companies are going to want to say, look, this was a maintenance issue. That tire should have been replaced at a certain amount of miles. So we have to do a little bit of investigation. But absolutely, anytime there's a wreck, there's always the possibility of a products liability case that kind of goes along with the personal injury case or property damage.
Okay, all right, again, makes sense. Next question was from Jim. Said, my wife and I were in a car accident, and the insurance company is attempting to negotiate a settlement. Why would I need to pay an attorney?
Right. So, kind of along the same lines there. The insurance companies, I've had several cases where the insurance companies will call the injured party immediately, want to get a statement, want to try to settle the claim as soon as they can. The concerns are many there. One, we don't know what the extent of the damages are to the individual, how hurt they are. A lot of people don't realize, but they get in an accident, they feel okay the first day, the next day is when they start really hurting. And they need to be evaluated by someone, a doctor, to determine what the extent of their injuries are before they go and settle the claim. And the underlying thing that I'm kind of talking about already is that these insurance companies, the big insurance companies, they're there to minimize their costs. They have attorneys hired for them to try to prevent people from getting settlements that are, of large monetary sums. So, you think that your insurance company is on your side and trying to keep the process. A lot of times they're trying to get admissions from you, trying to find ways that they can minimize the amount that they're going to, have to pay out. So it's a good idea to at least consult with an attorney to make sure that they're negotiating fairly with you. And from there, you kind of have the decision of whether to hire an attorney or to pursue the settlement.
Okay, all right. Let's see, next one, and you kind of touched on this slightly, but and I guess this is, Bruce asked, if you handle my case, how long would it take for me to get paid?
Okay, so this is a question that I, believe it or not, get asked a lot. People want to know when they're going to get their money from the accident, and it's understandable. They're going through a lot at the time. They're injured. They've lost, presumably their vehicle is potentially totaled in the accident, so they need that income to be able to get into another vehicle for transportation just to get to the doctors, and yet alone they need to pay their doctors, some of them. So the settlement actually can take a significant amount of time. If it's minor injuries, we may be talking a couple of months. If it's major injuries, it can be years. And a lot is driven by the actual injuries that an individual has. The good news is that we always make sure that we get providers that would work on a lien basis. And what a lien basis it means is that there's no money out of pocket for the injured party to get that treatment. And then the provider just takes part of the settlement when it comes out. So that can help with that time lag. Once the treatment is done, usually the attorneys can work very quickly to get a settlement at that point. So it's not really on the attorney to determine how long it goes. It's actually the person who's injured to see the extent of their damages. And one concern is if you try to settle the claim too quickly, you're going to sign a release that basically says that you cannot go back after any further claims for injuries and monetary value. So you don't want to settle your claim before you know the extent of your injuries.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Last question we had here was from Fan. Fan asked, I was hit by a truck last year and ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks, and insurance covered my expenses, excluding my lost time at work. But now I'm having back issues again. Is it possible to get these new expenses covered?
And that kind of also, with Fan, that question dovetails into what I was just talking about with the settling your claim. The big question with hers is, has she negotiated and settled her claim? If she has, it's very likely that she had to sign a document that releases the insurance company from any further liability, which means that she may be out of luck. Now, on the other hand, if she hasn't settled that claim, if it's still an outstanding claim, and the statute of limits hasn't run, which is another issue your attorney can kind of walk you through, then she should be able to get that treatment and make a claim to the insurance company. So it should be available to her depending on what stage she is at through the process.
Okay, and assuming she didn't sign off on anything, I guess. So, right. Okay, well, those were the questions that were posted. Like I said, if you have been in a car accident or an auto accident, just post your questions below. John has volunteered to answer these. John, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I'd be available to answer any further questions, any follow-up questions. I'd broadcast again. And Ryan, I appreciate the opportunity to answer the questions of your callers. Thanks.
Thanks. Today we're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix, Arizona. He's agreed to answer some of the questions we posted online. These questions were directly related to motorcycle accidents. If you're one of those people, he's going to answer your question right now. Alternatively, if you have been in a motorcycle accident, John, you can either reach out to John directly, you can give him a call, go to his website, shoot him an email. But he's also agreed to answer some questions directly below this. So if you actually have been in an accident on a motorcycle, just post your questions at the bottom of this video, and he's going to get back to you. With that said, John, let me go ahead and start off with the first question from the online user.
Right.
He asked, are the laws different for motorcycles than cars? I guess pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and it's actually a pretty straightforward answer. Cars and motorcycles not only follow the same laws, on the streets, but legally in a personal injury case, they have most of the same laws as each other. So when we're pursuing a personal injury claim, we're dealing with the same statutes. There is no significant difference from being involved with a motor vehicle or a motorcycle legally. There are different norms on the road, which we all know, which come into play, and those can be kind of come out with the factual basis and how it affects comparative fault or fault in general. But generally speaking, they're following the same laws.
Okay, all right, makes total sense. Next question we had was this individual laid down his bike due to a mechanical failure, and he's asking if he can sue the manufacturer.
Okay, so this question, it brings up a lot of different issues. He says he lays down his bike, so I'm assuming that the bike had a mechanical failure that caused him to have a wreck and then be injured because of that. So I'm filling in a little bit of the gaps there. The answer is that yes, you can sue the manufacturer. However, there needs to be an investigation done, and if there is a mechanical failure, we're going to have to find out what happened and what exactly caused that accident. If there is product on that vehicle or on the motorcycle that had difficulties or failed, it might be a product's liability claim. And a product's liability claim is actually a lawsuit against the dealer or the manufacturer of that motorcycle or the parts manufacturer. So it's a a negligence-based claim also, and it's something that you need to talk to a qualified person who is an injury attorney that can kind of guide you in the right direction with those cases, because they can become very complicated.
Okay, all right. Next question was, I wrecked my bike because there was a motorcycle. I wrecked my motorcycle because there was trash on the highway and I couldn't avoid it. I had some minor injuries and totaled out my bike. Do I have a case?
Yeah, so this is actually a similar case to someone who is involved in a hit-and-run accident. What happens is someone is injured and it wasn't their fault, it was someone else's fault, but we don't have the other person. So in this case, the other person presumably had some debris that was on the road that caused an accident. There is no person to sue directly in that regard, but most people have in their insurance policy, and if you don't have it, you should look into it, uninsured motorist coverage. And what that is coverage set aside for times when the other party who either injured you doesn't have insurance or not enough insurance, or we don't know who the other party is. And so you actually go and make a claim with your own insurance company, and you get compensation that way. So it is possible to get compensation in that situation, and anyone who finds themselves in that type of situation is definitely going to want to talk to an attorney about that.
Okay. All right. And the last question we had, this one's a little longer, so bear with me. Said, my son was recently hit by a truck while on his motorcycle. The driver never saw him, but my son was speeding. The police wrote it up as my son being at fault for the accident. He's facing some fairly serious medical bills. Even though it was his fault, is there any way to recover from any other of the groups or any other group?
Okay. So if I remember, this question has to do with the son was later arrested for driving under the influence. Is this the question?
No, this is not the question. This is the one. He is. He basically, all he's telling us in this one is he was caught speeding, and he was at fault for speeding, and the police wrote it up as it being his fault, but now he's seeing if he can actually recover from basically to cover some of his medical bills, even though.
Oh yes. Okay. So in this question, it was the driver's fault, and he's wondering if he can recover, even though he has medical bills, but it wasn't. But the accident was his fault. So this is actually a common question that I get, and there's a police report that wrote this individual up as being at fault for the accident. The police report is hearsay, so it's not all a loss when a police officer writes a citation for an individual and they make the determination that it was that driver's fault. There can be other investigation done to determine if there may be some comparative fault there. And if through an investigation we find out that the other person was even, say, 30% at fault for the accident, there is the possibility of getting some recovery there. So it's definitely something that any individual, even if they